Thank you so much, Karen. And sincerely, I hope that you do not take for granted the talent that God has blessed her with and the blessing it is to have her here. And so if you haven't expressed that to her lately, she loves attention. And so, in each era of history, I suppose it has always been this way. That when you get a little bit older, you will say of those who are younger, because of changes that have taken place, oh, they will never know what it's like, or they will never experience blah, blah, blah. And I suppose that there haven't been instances where that has been any more true than in the last 50 to 60, 100 years, especially when you've had such amazing technological advances. And so you just think, those of you that have been around for at least a few decades, it is amazing. And I think about for my own kids, they will never know what it's like to pick up, well, for one thing, a landline. But they'll never know what it's like to pick up the phone and say, I wonder who could be calling. This could be something good. I mean, they have no idea what that's like. TV has changed a great deal, significantly. And so those of you that, like when I was a kid, or certainly those of you that are older, so if you're going to watch something on TV, for one thing, there weren't many channels that were on. This whole notion of streaming or whatever, it was just purely broadcast. And so whatever the local stations in a particular region would be broadcasting, you would try to pick that up with an antenna. And so if you were an adult, this would be reason for you to have children. And the reason you would want children is so that they could adjust the antenna for you and actually change the channel before remotes had become commonplace. And so for me as a kid, I remember what it was like when it was time. We always watched the local CBS affiliate when that was on while we were having dinner, and that station didn't come in great. So you'd go adjust the rabbit ears, and it'd be perfectly crystal clear. You let go, nothing. So you just stand there, have your hot dog. It's a good story. Anyway, now we had the rabbit ears. My mom's parents, though, they were fancy. They had one of those antennas up on the roof. Remember those big whopper choppers? And not only was it one that was on the roof, but it was attached to a motor. And it had this device. In fact, Frank's got it for you. It had this device on it. So what you see with blue, that you turn it. Like kids, they will never know how wonderful that was. So if you're watching a show, you would know that, for example, Channel 9, I need to move the antenna south. So you turn it towards south, click, 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 click. Well, what if your show is not on, and maybe there's a ball game, and you don't want to watch that. You want to watch something else. So you want to go to the whatever affiliate. So you've got to click, 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 click. And you would have to do so. You would have to move that antenna because of this. It was fixed in a particular direction. It was fixed in a particular direction. Between now and Easter, we're going to be in a series that I'm calling The Hour. And it's based on Jesus' use of that phrase in the book of John, and it communicates the fact that Jesus was absolutely fixed on going to Calvary. When we started our journey to the cross on that Wednesday night a few weeks ago, one of the things that I tried to drive home was the fact that Jesus' death and that his giving of his life was not accidental. It did not catch him by surprise. It was absolutely, and the cross was absolutely intentional. Jesus was fixated on going to the cross. Well, if that is true, and I believe that it is, and I think Scripture bears it out, that's the question we're going to think about today. What does Jesus' fixation on the cross tell me? What does it tell you? What does his fixation on the cross tell us? Look with me in John's Gospel to John chapter 2. We'll begin reading with verse 1. John chapter 2 with verse 1, we're told on the third day a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, "They don't have any wine." "Well, what does that have to do with you and me, woman?" Jesus asked. "My hour," there's that phrase, "my hour has not yet come." "Do whatever he tells you," his mother told the servants. Now 6 stone water jars had been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus told them, and so they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, "Now draw out some and take it to the head waiter," and they did. When the head waiter tasted the water after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, "Everyone sets out the fine wine first. Then after people are drunk, the inferior, but you have kept the fine wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum, together with his mother, his brothers, and disciples, and stayed there only a few days. We're going to answer that question because I think this passage answers our question today, what his fixation tells us. But before we do that, I just want to unpack, first of all, what's being said here. In John's gospel, it begins with what you know as the prologue, or you may not know as the prologue. And so many of you may be familiar with, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. We beheld his glory, full of grace, and all that stuff you see in the prologue. John doesn't begin with the birth of Jesus, he begins with the ministry of Jesus. And what you see at the end of chapter 1 is that Jesus has called already 5 disciples. And the 5 disciples he's called are John and Andrew and Simon and Philip and Nathaniel. And when it says that Jesus and his disciples were invited to a wedding, it's likely at this point it just includes the 5, as the remainder of the 12 have not yet been called. Jesus is invited, and his disciples are invited, and his mother is also invited to a wedding that occurs in the town of Cana. Now, it has always been the case that weddings are a big deal. And in different cultures, people deal with them in different ways, but weddings are consequential. I mean, the fact that you are pledging a lifelong commitment and that this marriage becomes the foundation of family, this is a big deal. Historically, it is always, in virtually every culture, marriage has been something that warranted special attention and celebration. And so today, we may do all this in one day, like on a Saturday, you'll have a ceremony and then you'll have a reception. At this point in history, typically, and there's still plenty of cultures around the world that do this, you'll have a wedding celebration that will last days on end. It could last a few days. It could last up to a week. How long exactly this marriage celebration is going on, we don't know. Now, one of the things that's different, though, today, tradition is that the bride's family takes care of it. At this point in history, the groom's family would have been responsible for paying for and providing for this elaborate celebration. So you've got a party, and so if you've got a party, you need food, you need drink, and so it would be the groom's responsibility, his family, to provide for this. It was a big deal to make sure that you were doing the best that you absolutely could. Many times this would involve people borrowing money or selling things that were of real value to pay for these wedding celebrations, because to run out of food or to have bad food or to have a lack of wine, that was a big, big no-no. That's something that people are going to talk about, well, for quite a while. This was a big social no-no. Jesus is at this wedding. His disciples are there. How long it has been going on, we don't know. But Jesus' mother, Mary, comes and announces the fact that there is a problem. She says, they don't have any wine. This suggests a couple of things. For one thing, it suggests that this wedding celebration has been going on for some time and it's not over with. So they're running out of wine before they run out of party. It also suggests that Mary has something to do, likely some connection with the family. We don't know. You can just suppose that. You can reason that, deduce that. We don't know. But it seems that she has something to do with the groom side of the family, and maybe she's responsible for food and beverage and making sure that stuff stays rolling. And she discovers we've got a real problem. This is hugely consequential, and there's going to be a lot of talk. This is going to look really bad on this relationship, that it starts out with a celebration and there's not even enough wine. And so she goes and announces to Jesus they don't have any wine. And Jesus responds in a way that likely may get your attention. What does that have to do with you and me, woman? I am 50 years old. If my mom calls me today and says, my house doesn't have any power, and I said, woman, her house may not have any power, but her car does. And she would drive to Greensboro and throat punch me. My dad would raise from the grave and put my teeth on the ground if I said, woman, what does that have to do with you and me? Something that and this happens today as well, though, you do yourself a disservice if you judge something that's going on historically through the lens of current cultural standards. I don't mean moral, I mean cultural standards. And so culturally, we wouldn't talk that way. First century Jewish culture, this was not at all a disrespectful, dishonoring way to speak to his mother. Addressing her as woman was not something that would have been received as disrespectful or being discourteous to his mother. And so he says woman to her. There's two conversations that we have recorded between Jesus and Mary. We have this one, then we have one later as Jesus is hanging on the cross, and he said, do you remember, he says, woman, behold your son. And then he tells John, behold your mother, which is to say, I need you to take care of her as if she is your own mother. And so in this tender, affectionate moment on the cross where he is ensuring her well-being, he addresses her by the same title he uses here. This goes to drive home the point that there is no disrespect intended whatsoever. He's not trying to smack her at all and say this. Now, there is a tinge of rebuke in this statement, though, not based on the title that he uses, but on the phrase that he uses. What does this have to do with you and me? You are coming to me with this issue, you're coming to me with this challenge, and seemingly this is a big deal. But why exactly is this a big deal? And then he says, my hour has not yet come. My hour has not yet come. Why did Mary go to Jesus in the first place? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and some of them are speculated. One is that Joseph is likely already deceased, and that's probably the case. One, because of life expectancy at this point in history, but because of the gospel's silent witness to his existence and the fact that at Jesus' crucifixion just 3 years later, her welfare is going to be entrusted to the care of John. All of this suggests that Joseph has already died. She's probably a widow. And as such, she had grown quite accustomed to leaning on Jesus, depending on Jesus, that he was kind of just the go-to responsible person in their life. Some of you that may be older, that you've got an adult child that is kind of your responsible person to be able to go to. Jesus almost certainly is that in part for her. And now some would say, well, she went to Jesus because she expects a miracle. Well, John tells us that this is the first sign, and this is the first miracle of Jesus' ministry. I think certainly she knew what the angels had said when they announced the miraculous conception of Jesus, that she was going to give birth to God the Son. She knew that. She knew how Jesus started. But I don't know necessarily that there were specific instances where Jesus had done something where she probably just thought, well, he's special, he's unique. I don't think she went to Jesus because she thought he was going to do a miracle. I think the miracle he performed, she was completely as surprised as any of the servants were. Had no idea that Jesus was going to do this. She's going to Jesus with a problem because, well, that's what she does. If there's a problem with The wedding, go to Jesus. If there's a problem that the door handle doesn't work, we'll go to Jesus. If there's a problem that the cow has run dry, we'll go to Jesus. Whatever the problem is, go to Jesus. And so Jesus responds to her and he says, my hour has not yet come. Now, he's going to use that phrase repeatedly in John's gospel, and it's a loaded phrase, and it has to do with the fact that Jesus was marching intently, deliberately towards the cross. When he talks about his hour, he's talking about everything that was going to be part of his sacrifice, everything that was going to be part of him giving himself for the sins of mankind. And she doesn't get what he says. She doesn't understand this. She just hears, well, my hour has not yet come. And so she just says, well, do whatever he tells you, to the servants. She anticipates that Jesus is going to do something. Maybe he's going to get some money together and they'll go buy some. Maybe they will send word out, hey, go to your house and bring whatever you can so that we've got enough here for the wedding. She just anticipates Jesus is going to do something. And so we're told in verse 6 that there are 6 stone water jars or water pots that have been set aside for Jewish purification. Now these water pots, we're told, contained or would hold between 20 or 30 gallons. And they're made of stone. So these things empty are not lightweight. Then you put 20 to 30 gallons of water. Water weighs a little over 8 pounds per gallon. So somewhere between, well, I can't do the math right now in my head, but you just, these things are heavy, super heavy. And so it may be that you imagine they just drag these things and go fill them up. More likely what is happening is that they're going to a well and they're bringing buckets and putting some water in this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Somewhere between 120 and 180 gallons of water, they've got to do this. This suggests that this process of filling these things, and it wasn't halfway full, it wasn't 3/4, but all the way up to the brim. That's what Jesus said, fill them to the top, and they do this. Probably took some time. So they do this. The servants seemingly are aware that there's a problem. There's no wine. But Jesus is saying, well, get water. They're probably thinking, okay. But Mary said, do whatever he says, so I'm going to do whatever he says. And once these are filled, he tells them to draw some out and take it to the head waiter. So draw out a cup, take it to the head waiter. What are they carrying? Well, they're carrying a cup to the head waiter. What do they know it has in it? Water. Now, the question is when this miracle happens. We don't know exactly when. But at some point between the jugs getting filled and the moment that this head waiter tastes this, that which was absolutely plain, well-drawn water has now become wine. So they take it to the head waiter, and the head waiter is, well, he's kind of amazed. He is shocked. In fact, he is so shocked that he wants some attention and an audience with the groom. So sir, I've done this at a lot of weddings. And typically what happens is they start with the good stuff because people, their taste buds, their palate is fresh. And so we're going to start with the stuff that costs the most, that's of premium vintage. And then as their tastes get dulled, as their senses get dulled, we'll bring out the cheap stuff. But you have kept the fine wine, the premium vintage, until now. Holy cow. Now, the head waiter, he has no idea what's going on. The groom has no idea what's going on. But Jesus knows what's going on. And the servants know what has gone on. The disciples know what has gone on because we are told that this was the first of his signs. He revealed his glory, and his disciples, in response to this, they believe in him. That's the miracle. That's the story. Jesus turns water into wine at Cana. But he says, as a part of this, my hour has not yet come. And my hour has to do with his fixation on the cross, that he is marching towards Calvary. What does this tell me? What does this have to do with me? What does this communicate about Jesus' fixation on the cross? Well, based on what we see here, I believe it communicates, first of all, this. I cannot transfer my priorities to Jesus. I cannot transfer my priorities to Jesus. Mary goes to Jesus not simply with a problem, but with what she believes to be a big and consequential problem. This is, in Mary's mind, this is a big deal. It warrants my concern. It warrants my increased blood pressure. It warrants me chasing Jesus and dragging him off to the side so that I can announce this news to him. Jesus, I need to let you know about this. And furthermore, as she was communicating this to Jesus, this was not merely an information dump. It was not just FYI. She's sharing this with Jesus because there is the anticipation he's going to do something. Now, again, I don't think she expects a miracle. I think she expects he's going to do something. And when Jesus responds to her, he says, what does this have to do with you and me? Which is to say something about, is this really that big of a deal? This is arousing such concern. And then he says, my hour has not yet come. So get this scenario in your mind. She's gone to Jesus and she says, here's the problem. Jesus says, what's the big deal? My time, my hour hasn't come. So what do you expect Jesus is going to do? Well, you expect he's going to do nothing. But he does this miracle. Well, how is that? And why is this? What I want you to understand is that there's, I believe, a principle going on. It was true then, it's true today, and that's this. Priorities can be arranged. Priorities can be rearranged. They can be adopted, but they cannot be transferred. You can adopt priorities. You can arrange or rearrange them, but you cannot transfer them. You cannot make something that is a priority for you. You can't just announce that and all of a sudden it become the same priority for someone else. Let me give you an example. Wednesday night, after Bible study, because of other kids driving, it was just going to be me and Caroline and John going home. So we get into the car and I said, hey, why don't we get him a treat tonight? So we figured out we're going to go to Wendy's and get a Frosty. So we haven't had one of those in ages. We go over to the Wendy's at Adams Farm to get a Frosty. Anyway, we had that, and mine was chocolate, and for whatever, I was so thirsty. I'd been teaching for an hour before then, and I was just so thirsty, and I didn't plan on buying a drink at all, but man, I thought, I am so thirsty. So I said, I'm going to go get a drink really quick. And so I walked back up. There's just one cash register that's open, and the cash register is looking like this. And it's not merely that she's looking down, but I can hear by the sound of coins counting, she is balancing her drawer. I can also tell she's not going to be finished anytime soon. So I hear all this coin going, and so, but I stand there and I get a little closer to the counter. Because maybe she hasn't seen me, hasn't noticed me, because she hasn't stopped what she's doing. Finally, I go into full tuberculosis mode. And all I hear are nickels, dimes, and quarters. She is not going to look up. But about that time, the drive-through cashier says, can I help you? And so he takes my drink order, and she never, ever flinches. Now, what we had going on here was a conflict of priorities. My priority was getting something to drink. I was making my priority known. She had a priority, and it was getting that drawer balanced. I am communicating my priority to her, and I'm saying by my repeated throat clears and my incessant coughing, this is a big deal. I am seeking to affect her. I am seeking to cause her to rearrange her priorities. In fact, more than that, I am seeking to transfer my priority to her so that what is a big deal to me, which is level one for me, it better become level one for her. But you know what she did? She balanced her drawer. Why? Because I can't transfer my priorities to someone else. I can communicate them. They may adopt them. They may arrange theirs or rearrange theirs, but I cannot just press the send button and what's a priority for me become a priority for you. Not only that, as a follower of Christ, you can't do that either. You can't just say, oh, here's my problem. It's level 1. Let me put a red flag out beside it. Jesus, here's my problem, and now you fix that. Why? Jesus, he says here, my hour has not yet come. There is something that is an ultimate priority, and that's going to remain a priority. I can share with him my concerns, but that doesn't mean that he's going to adjust or reallot his priorities. Why do I need to understand that? I need to get that straight in my mind before the challenge comes because of this. When I was at Wendy's and that person did not adopt my priorities, you know what I did? I found somebody else. That cashier wouldn't help me, so I got the drive-through cashier to help me. And what can happen with respect to faith, that you can be going through your dark hour, you can be going through your difficulty and be saying, ringing heaven and saying, hey, this is a problem, this is level 1, this is threat level midnight. Jesus, we got to do something here. And if he doesn't do something, you could just say, well, fine, I'll find somebody else. What I'm telling you is this. You can't transfer your priorities to him so that what you think is most important is all of a sudden, just by virtue of you communicating it, going to be most important for him. Get that straight in your mind before your faith begins to crack. But there's another thing that you need to get straight in your mind based on this passage, and this is, I believe it clearly tells us this, that Jesus is absolutely for you, but he is not at all about you. Jesus is for you, but he is not about you. Over and over and over and over again in John's gospel, you're going to see Jesus reference my hour. Here he says at the beginning of his ministry, my hour has not yet come. The prayer that Jesus shares in John 17 before he goes to Gethsemane, when he is praying for the church, when he is praying for believers, what does he say? This is just before he is betrayed, just before he is arrested, just before he's crucified. What does he say then? He says, my hour has come. So the hour has everything to do with the cross, has everything to do with Jesus' sacrifice, has everything to do with Jesus laying his life down. And here he says, my hour has not yet come. But Mary has said, hey, there's a problem. We have no wine. That's a problem. Jesus says, my hour has not yet come. So the expectation is, if you were going to write the ending to the story, you would say that Mary goes about her business, Jesus goes about his business, and that's it. Except this story, Jesus does something. Jesus performs a miracle. Jesus turns water into wine, and not just wine, but to premium vintage. Mary didn't expect it. The disciples didn't expect it. The servants didn't expect it. But he does this. Why did he do something, especially on the heels of saying that my hour has not yet come? When Jesus said, my hour has not yet come, sincerely, I believe that he was putting down a placeholder. In effect, to say that I am one who has come for an ultimate mission, for an ultimate task, for an ultimate aim. And that is to go to the cross, to give what the Bible tells us as his life is a ransom for many. That's the ultimate gain, that's the ultimate mission, that's the ultimate intent. That act, more than words ever could, communicate this reality. Jesus is for you because he gave his life for you. Just before he actually went to the cross, as he is celebrating the Passover meal with the disciples, and he infuses it with new meaning. He tells them going forward, listen guys, as often as you do this, and all those that would follow Jesus afterwards, as often as you do this to remember me. And he says that this is my body that in blood, this is given for you. The hour, the cross, tells me that Jesus is for me. The cross, more than anything else, says that Jesus is for you. But he says To Mary, listen, my hour has not yet come, yet he still does something. He still performs this miracle. Why does he perform this miracle? Because, very simply, it did not take away from the ultimate mission. It did not detract from that which mattered most. Oh, what does that mean for me? What does it mean for you? It means this, that when you go to God with your priority, when you go to him with your difficulty of the moment, you can't just automatically, it's priority one for you, all of a sudden it's priority one for him. You can share that. God may do something, but what he does, if he acts, if he chooses not to act, whatever he does will not ever detract from his ultimate aim. And what is the ultimate aim? Jesus said that he came to seek and to save that which is lost. Performing this miracle did not detract from that. In fact, what we see at the end of this is that this spurned and spawned belief in the heart of the 5 that have already committed themselves to following Jesus. That what Jesus does, if he does something in my circumstance, well, it communicates that it doesn't detract from the ultimate mission because he is for me. Don't doubt that. Don't question that. But he doesn't revolve around you. He doesn't acclimate to you. He doesn't adjust to you. It's not the tail wagging the dog. He is for you, but he is not at all about you. When I was in elementary school, and I'm guessing it's still true today though, because of either school board requirement or because of fire marshal requirement, but we would have regular fire drills. And I don't know what the requirement was, if it was quarterly or whatever. It was supposed to be multiple times a year. And so in elementary school, how it worked is that there was a designated place that your particular class, when the fire alarm went off, you would march in an orderly way out to that particular location outside. And that's beneficial because if there is a fire, you need to know how to get people out, get them to a safe place. All right, so we did that. One of the things, though, as a kid, I noticed was that every time that we did that, they announced to make sure that you take your trash can with you. Which, that would make more sense if you're carrying water in it. But no, take your trash can with you. And so what would happen is that once you had gotten to the safe place and they rang the bell that says the all clear, you don't just go inside at that point. For the next little bit, all the kids pick up trash at school. And one of the things, as a kid, I noticed this. If there was some sort of weekend event, like if there was a fall festival or there was a big thing that would happen around Labor Day, if there was something that happened on school grounds over the weekend, you could bet your bottom dollar, Monday morning there's going to be a fire drill. Sure, I mean, like clockwork. First thing, you're going to start with a fire drill. Now, the truth is, they were for kids' safety. They were. They were for having kids know what to do in the event of an emergency. They were for that. But you know what they were about? Getting the trash picked up. That's what ultimately this was. That's why I take your trash can out. That's why we're going to have a fire drill today. It's not yes, we're for safety, but we need to get all this trash picked up. So let's send 1,000 kids out, and we'll do that pretty quickly. They were for safety. They were for children, but they were about getting the trash picked up. Listen, God is for you. Jesus unequivocally is for you, but he's not about you. Why do you need to know that? Because something is going to come up in your life. Maybe it has already. And there's going to be this urgent, the sky is falling moment. And you're going to go to him and say, this is what's going on, with the full expectation that this is going to get resolution, that this is going to change, that he's going to do something to reverse these fortunes. It's possible that he may. It is possible that he may. But don't bet on it. Don't bank on it. Because he is never, ever, ever going to do something in your circumstances that is going to take away from the ultimate mission. from what matters most. And if meeting your particular need aligns with advancing his ultimate aim to seek and to save that which is lost, he's going to do that. But if it detracts from that, he's not going to do it. Why? Because he's for you, but he's not about you. So let me ask you this. It's really clear, based on this and in passages we're going to continue to look at, that the hour mattered to Jesus. That this whole experience of giving his life and going to Calvary, it mattered hugely to him. How about you? Does the fact that he did that, is that of consequence to you? Maybe it's through symbols with people getting baptized today, or it's through something that was sung. Maybe it was something that you heard in Bible study before our service today. But somehow God has been rattling your cage and causing you to realize, man, this is a big deal because he is very much for me. He didn't do this because of, he's for me. He gave his life for me. He marched to the cross for me. Have you responded to that? If not, today could be your day. Maybe you would say, well, Michael, I've already done that. I've already done that. Check that box many years ago. I've been following Jesus for a long time. But could it be that there might be some cracks in your faith? Maybe some discouragement that you're feeling because you've been pulling on the Lord's ear. This is a big problem. You got to fix this. Got something going on. The sky is falling. Do something, do something, do something. And maybe you have been tempted to resort to other avenues, or maybe it is that you have just been thinking, well, maybe you're not who I thought you were. And God is trying to reinforce in your mind he's for you, without question. But he's not about you. And there's nothing that he's going to do in your circumstance that's going to detract from his ultimate mission and his aim. So what's he saying to you? What will you say to him today? Will you bow your heads with me?